Welcome, deep divers, to another journey into the heart of wisdom. Life often feels like a carefully constructed house, right?
Yeah.
We build it up, we try to make it comfortable.
Right.
We really expect it to stand firm.
Solid.
But then, inevitably, sometimes the foundations shift. Maybe the roof starts leaking or, a storm comes along, and suddenly our whole world feels like it's just unraveling.
Yeah, like the ground just vanishes beneath your feet.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
everything you thought was stable is suddenly gone. We've all been there, haven't we? Standing right on the edge of fear or anxiety or maybe deep heartbreak, just wondering, okay, what do I do now?
And the first instinct, it's almost always to pull back.
Right. Resist it, try and patch it up quick, or just, wish it would all go away.
But what if? What if there was a radically different way? Something almost, counterintuitive.
That's what we're exploring today.
Indeed. Today, we're not just talking about those tough moments. We're really diving deep into the profound wisdom of the American Buddhist nun, Pema Chödrön, especially her guidance from her really transformative book, When Things Fall Apart.
And her core teaching, it really challenges our usual approach to difficulty, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Instead of, desperately trying to escape pain or wall it off or pretend it doesn't exist.
Which feels so natural.
Right. She encourages us to do something incredibly courageous, to actually lean into it.
Lean into the pain.
Yes. And that's our mission for this deep dive, to explore how these moments, the fear, the anxiety, the heartbreak, aren't just, unwelcome obstacles we have to somehow get through.
But opportunities.
Exactly. Precious opportunities for spiritual awakening, for real personal growth, and for opening the heart in ways we might never have imagined possible. And we'll draw from a whole range of spiritual and philosophical traditions to kind of illuminate this path, hopefully guiding you, our listener, to find some strength and clarity when life throws those inevitable curveballs.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this because, wow, that is a radical invitation. It just flies directly in the face of so much of what we're usually taught or how we instinctively react.
Mm-hmm.
Pema Chödrön drops this bombshell right near the start, doesn't she? She says, chaos should be regarded as extremely good news.
Good news. Chaos.
I know. And then, maybe even more provocatively, she suggests that fear is a natural reaction to moving closer to the truth.
Which sounds completely backward to our usual way of thinking.
Utterly, deeply counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when chaos erupts in our lives, maybe a sudden job loss, a relationship ending, an unexpected health scare, we usually see it as a problem, a sign something's gone terribly, terribly wrong.
We label it bad, negative, something to get rid of fast.
Exactly. And fear, we're conditioned to see fear as this big red warning sign. Avoid it, conquer it, run away.
Mm-hmm. Danger signal.
So why on earth would she suggest this? This kind of inverted perspective. What's the good news in chaos? What truth is fear supposedly leading us towards?
Well, what's really fascinating here, and what Chödrön invites us to really consider, is that fundamental shift in perspective itself. Our usual way, our inclination, whether it's something small like missing a train or deep grief, is usually one of two things. Either avoid the discomfort completely, distract ourselves.
Scroll through our phones.
Right. Or jump immediately into fixing it. We see it as an error, a glitch in the system that needs correcting so we can get back to, normal. That state of equilibrium we crave.
That's our default setting. Escape, fix, control.
Absolutely. But Chödrön asks us to completely reframe these challenging moments, to stop seeing them as problems that need solving and start seeing them as direct, really potent paths to a deeper reality, and crucially, to personal growth.
Okay, so how is chaos good news then? Feels pretty bad usually.
Well, think about it. Chaos is a powerful disruptor, isn't it? It shatters our rigid, often unconscious assumptions about how things are supposed to be.
Our neat little boxes.
Exactly. Our comfort zones, our routines, our fixed beliefs about ourselves and the world. These can become like thick, opaque lenses. They actually stop us from seeing anything in a fresh, open way.
We think we know, but we don't really.
Right. Chaos just sweeps away those preconceived notions. It forces us to confront the raw, unvarnished truth of this moment right now. It's like, imagine your comfortable living room furniture suddenly being totally rearranged or even just taken away.
Unsettling.
Definitely.
Very unsettling, yes. But it forces you to actually look at the space you're in, maybe for the first time, to see its real dimensions, its possibilities, without the usual clutter.
Okay, I can see that. And what about fear being a gateway to truth?
Similarly, fear, if we meet it with presence instead of our usual resistance or running away, it becomes this incredibly powerful force for revelation.
Oh, so?
Well, instead of fleeing from it, if we can just be willing to be with the feeling, just observe it without immediately reacting.
Which is hard.
Oh, incredibly hard. But if we can, it starts to strip away the illusions we've built up. Illusions about our control, our invulnerability, our attachments to specific outcomes, even illusions about who we think we are.
Our identity.
Exactly. Fear, seen this way, reveals these underlying truths about ourselves. What do we really value? What are we clinging on to so tightly? It highlights the impermanent nature of everything. So it's a gateway, not a wall, but only if we're willing to walk through it consciously, without judging ourselves for feeling it.
So it's not about seeking suffering out.
Not at all. It's about not wasting the opportunity that suffering presents when it inevitably shows up in our lives. It's already here, so what can we learn?
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you bring in her idea of complete discipline. She describes it as being willing to come back, just gently come back to the present moment, particularly when facing something really tough, like loneliness. And let's be honest, that idea of profound aloneness, that deep existential solitude, it can feel terrifying for most people.
They really can.
We fill our lives constantly, don't we? Distractions, noise, endless connection through devices, social stuff. Often just to avoid that raw, solitary feeling.
Anything but sit with it.
Yeah. It's a discomfort that can really send us spiraling, make us feel totally lost. So how does this complete discipline, this gentle coming back, help us face something so fundamentally unsettling?
This is where Chödrön offers something incredibly insightful and actually, I think, quite liberating about this universal human experience. She states it very profoundly, and it might hit you with a bit of starkness at first. He says, "We are fundamentally alone, and there is nothing anywhere to hold on to."
Oof. That sounds bleak.
It does initially, doesn't it? But it's crucial to understand she's not presenting this as like a problem to be fixed or some tragedy. It's not a lament.
Yep.
Instead, she offers it as a basic, undeniable truth of existence. And here's the key part. She sees it as an immense opportunity, the chance to finally discover a completely unfabricated state of being.
An unfabricated state of being. What does that mean exactly?
Well, let's pause on that phrase. Think about how much of our lives are built on fabrication, on layers we add. We construct identities based on our jobs, our achievements, our relationships, what we own.
Or roles.
Our roles, exactly. We operate under what she calls these habitual assumptions, our fixed ideas about how things are. And these assumptions, they really prevent us from seeing anything in a fresh, open way. Someone tells us something and we go, oh yeah, I know that. But often we're just filtering it through our existing ideas.
We think we know, but maybe we don't.
Exactly. She says
Yeah.
we don't ultimately know anything. There's no certainty about anything. And that basic truth, it hurts. It challenges our deep need for security, for solid ground.
So we run.
So our immediate, almost instinctive reaction is to run away from it, to
Yeah.
find something, anything to grab onto to fill that void, that uncertainty.
Makes sense.
But Chödrön champions the practice of coming back and relaxing with something as familiar as loneliness. She sees it not as an enemy to escape, but as good discipline for realizing the profundity of the unresolved moments of our lives.
So staying with the discomfort is the discipline.
Yes,
Okay.
because when we habitually flee from this ambiguity, from that raw feeling of being alone, she says, we are cheating ourselves. We're denying ourselves access to a deeper reality, a truer state.
How so?
By simply being present with that discomfort, the feeling of aloneness, without judging it, without the immediate urge to escape or fill the space with noise, we start to chip away at those layers of fabrication we talked about.
The roles, the assumptions.
Exactly. We start to see what's actually there when all the external props, the stories we tell ourselves, are momentarily set aside. This practice fosters a genuine, unconditioned state. A sense of self that exists beyond our attachments, our expectations, our conditioned knee-jerk reactions.
A deeper self.
A deeper self. It's a profound form of self-acceptance, really. A radical honesty that allows our true essential nature, unadorned, unburdened, to just emerge. It's actually in those moments of quiet, undefended presence that we can connect to a much deeper, more resilient part of ourselves than we usually realize.
Okay, that deep, unfabricated self. That sounds like an incredible kind of liberation. But here's where it gets really interesting, right? When we look at why we resist this leaning in, Why do we fight embracing discomfort and aloneness? It feels so natural, almost instinctual, to avoid pain.
It really does. It's deeply ingrained.
Michael A. Singer in The Untethered Soul describes this perfectly, I think. He talks about how we instinctively pull a shell around the part of you that is weak.
Mm-hmm. Like a protective layer.
Yeah, to protect what he calls your ego, your self-concept, even when there's no actual physical threat out there.
Yeah.
It's like we build this internal fortress, brick by painful brick, reaction by reaction. Can you elaborate on this protective mechanism? Why does it become such a huge barrier to the kind of freedom Chödrön is talking about?
Absolutely. And Singer's description of pulling that shell around ourselves, it lines up perfectly with Chödrön's observation about our tendency to just run away from pain. Imagine inside each of us, there's this highly sensitive, vulnerable core, our weak spot, you could say.
Okay.
When that core experiences hurt or embarrassment or fear, our natural psychological reaction is, understandably, to protect it. So we create these invisible shells. They're often totally unconscious.
What are they made of? Not concrete, obviously.
No, they're made of our defensive reactions,
Yeah.
our pride, our need to be right, our tendency to blame others, our anxieties, our withdrawal, our anger, all those things we use to push discomfort away. Now, Singer explains that the seemingly rational protective strategy over time actually creates what he calls a hypersensitive psyche. And this psyche becomes way out of balance.
How so? How to balance?
What happens is that this internal fortress, which was originally meant to keep pain out, ironically ends up making us more susceptible to suffering.
Oh, interesting. How does that work?
Because we become so attuned to protecting that sensitive spot, the slightest little thing, maybe a critical look from a colleague, a perceived slight from a friend, a tiny imperfection we notice, even an unreturned text message.
Things that maybe shouldn't be a big deal.
Exactly. They trigger this exaggerated, often really painful overreaction. We end up spending enormous amounts of energy closing ourselves off, protecting this fragile, sensitive part, constantly on guard.
Exhausting.
Totally exhausting. But Singer issues this really powerful warning here, and it's one we really need to hear. By doing this, by building these shells, you're locking your illness inside yourself, and it will only get worse.
Wow. Locking it in.
Yes. It vividly shows how our avoidance doesn't actually resolve the suffering. It just perpetuates it, often intensifying it over time. We become prisoners of our own defense mechanisms, trapped in this cycle of fear, defensiveness, and recurring pain.
So these internal prisons, built out of our fear of being vulnerable.
They actually prevent us from engaging with life fully, from experiencing genuine connection, and ultimately from finding that unfabricated state of being that Chödrön points towards. The very thing we think is protecting us is actually blocking our healing.
And it's not just about protecting ourselves from external things we think are threats.
Right.
It's also about the internal stories, the narratives we cling to about how the world works and who we are.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of it.
Don Miguel Ruiz, in The Four Agreements and then The Fifth Agreement, talks so powerfully about this internal fog we often live in. He calls it a dream, your personal dream of life.
Mm-hmm.
And he says this dream is basically composed of all our false beliefs, our ingrained concepts, and these agreements we've made, often unconsciously, that just blind us to what's actually true. It's like we create this whole world inside our heads without even realizing we're the architects. How does this personal dream fuel our resistance to truth and keep us stuck in suffering?
That's such a crucial point, and it digs right into the psychological and, you could say, spiritual layers of our resistance to embracing discomfort. Ruiz argues that two of our most damaging agreements, these unconscious pacts we make with ourselves, are making assumptions and taking things personally.
Assuming and taking personally.
He says these two things are the primary sources of what he calls emotional poison. They generate all the sadness and drama in our lives. Think about it. We create this internal chaos not usually from objective reality, but by fabricating entire stories based on our assumptions about reality, and then reacting emotionally as if those fabricated stories are the absolute truth.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you see a friend across the room, and they look kind of upset or distracted. Immediately, you might assume, oh, they must be angry at me, or I must have done something wrong.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Then you take it personally. You build this whole internal narrative around that assumption. This creates anxiety or resentment or sadness inside you, often completely disconnected from what your friend is actually experiencing. Maybe they just had a terrible commute or got some bad news totally unrelated to you.
Right. We make it about us.
Exactly. And instead of just seeking clarity, we make these assumptions, we convince ourselves we're right about them, and then we often defend those assumptions, even just to ourselves. Ruiz points out how things like gossip are a powerful way we actually transfer poison to one another, spreading these unverified assumptions and all the emotional baggage that comes with them.
So what's the antidote, according to Ruse?
Well, his practical advice, which comes from ancient Toltec wisdom, is strikingly simple but honestly profoundly challenging in practice. It is always better to ask questions than to make an assumption, because assumptions set us up for suffering.
Ask questions instead of assuming.
Yes, and this ties right back to Chödrön challenging our habitual assumptions, right? That idea that we just know how things are. Ruiz pushes us even further, suggesting the real problem isn't the world itself, but our internal representation of it, our personal dream, with all its ingrained beliefs and agreements. It's just a story.
Just a story we're telling ourselves.
Exactly. But here's the incredibly liberating insight, and this is really empowering. He says, the real you is unique, and it's beyond everything that you know, because the real you is the truth.
Beyond what we think we know.
Right. The real you isn't your assumptions, it's not your beliefs, it's not your personal dream. It's that unconditioned, essential self we were talking about earlier. And the moment you become aware that you're dreaming, the moment you recognize that your perceived reality is largely a construct of your own mind, you recover your power to change the dream whenever you choose.
Awareness gives you power.
Immense power. It transforms your perceived reality from this fixed prism you're trapped in into more like a flexible canvas. It gives you the freedom to consciously create a better story for yourself, one that's rooted in truth, in clarity, in genuine inquiry, instead of being driven by fear and illusion. It's a huge shift from being just a passive character in your own self-created drama to becoming the conscious author of your experience.
Okay, so recognizing these ego patterns, these shells we build, and starting to see through the fog of our personal dream, that's one side of the coin. What's the other side? It feels like the way out involves a really direct, courageous facing of our inner landscape. Tara Brach talks about this as radical acceptance.
A powerful concept.
It sounds challenging, maybe even a bit intimidating, but also potentially incredibly liberating. How does this idea of radical acceptance practically help us dismantle those internal protections and illusions we've just been discussing?
Radical acceptance really is the transformative act here. It's like a direct antidote to the ego's protective shells and that personal dream built on assumptions. Brach explains that often our strong negative emotions like anger and resentment, whether they're directed outwards at others or inwards at ourselves, actually serve a specific, though ultimately unhealthy, purpose.
What purpose is that?
They effectively remove us from the deeper pain of our hurt and shame. The anger or resentment acts like another protective layer, almost like an emotional firewall. It stops us from having to truly engage with our core vulnerability.
So it's easier to be angry than feel ashamed or hurt.
Often, yes. For example, we might get angry at someone who criticized us because that anger feels more powerful, maybe more manageable than the underlying shame or insecurity their words actually triggered.
Okay, I get that. So what does radical acceptance propose instead?
Yeah. Instead, radical acceptance means consciously releasing our stories of blame, those narratives about who's wrong and why we're justified in our anger, and allowing ourselves directly to experience the feelings of shame and fear in our body.
In the body, not just in the head.
Exactly. This isn't about intellectualizing your pain, analyzing it away. It's about a deep, embodied engagement. It means noticing, where does that fear actually sit in your chest? How does that shame feel in your stomach? What about the tension in your shoulders?
Just noticing.
Just noticing it, observing it without judgment, without trying to immediately change it or fix it or explain it away. This direct, compassionate, embodied presence with difficult emotions rather than running from them or analyzing them to death is what actually fosters genuine self-compassion.
And that self-compassion is key.
It's absolutely crucial. And Brault's work here resonates so deeply with Brené Brown's extensive research on shame, which is such a powerful and often hidden emotion, isn't it?
Definitely. We don't like talking about it.
No. Brown highlights that shame is universal. It's one of the most primitive human emotions. And essentially, it boils down to the fear of being unlovable. It's that intensely painful feeling or experience of believing deep down that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging.
That's a heavy feeling.
It is. But the critical insight Brown offers, which fits perfectly with Brach's radical acceptance, is that the less we talk about shame, the more control it has over our lives.
Hiding it gives it power.
Precisely. When we hide our shame, when we don't acknowledge it, when we don't bring it out into the light, it just festers in the shadows and dictates our behavior without us even realizing it. So actively confronting and accepting these difficult feelings through practicing self-compassion becomes essential to practicing authenticity and embracing imperfection.
Accepting our imperfections.
Yes. It's about making space for all parts of our human experience, the beautiful, the challenging, the really uncomfortable stuff, recognizing that this acceptance is a vital path towards genuine freedom, self-worth, and ultimately opening our hearts. It's fundamental recognizing that our perceived flaws don't actually diminish our inherent worthiness.
It's incredibly powerful, moving through the discomfort to find compassion and authenticity. And that brings us to another really profound idea: the possibility of finding meaning in our pain.
Not glorifying it, but transforming it.
Exactly. Viktor Frankl, drawing from his unbelievable insights in man's search for meaning, famously asserted that suffering is no longer suffering when it has found its meaning.
A truly profound statement.
Especially coming from someone who endured the absolute horrors of the Nazi concentration camps. How can finding meaning possibly transform such intense, unimaginable suffering?
Frankl's work is just this incredible testament to the resilience of the human spirit, isn't it? A real beacon of hope that emerged from the darkest of places. He emphasizes, even in the most dehumanizing circumstances imaginable, our inherent freedom to choose how we respond to a situation.
Our response is always ours to choose.
Always. Regardless of how dire the external circumstances are, this, he argues, is the ultimate human freedom, the one thing that can never actually be taken away from us, even when everything else is stripped away: possessions, loved ones, physical freedom. That inner freedom to choose our attitude, to choose our response, always remains.
That's empowering in itself.
Hugely. And his assertion that suffering is no longer suffering when it has found its meaning aligns directly with Chödrön's whole idea of leaning in. Frankl saw that he and his fellow prisoners often faced the temptation to try and alleviate their torments by just ignoring them or by harboring empty illusions, wishful thinking, denial.
Trying to escape mentally.
Right. But he realized that true resilience, true inner strength, came from refusing that path. It came from confronting the brutal reality of their suffering and actively seeking, or even creating, meaning within it.
How did they find meaning in such a place?
Well, for some, maybe meaning was found in protecting a fellow prisoner, sharing a scrap of bread. For others, perhaps it was holding on to the memory of a loved one. For Frankl himself, a key part was the thought of completing his life's work, his psychological theories. When you grasp the meaning of your suffering, it's not that the pain magically disappears, but its very nature transforms. It changes from being just a senseless burden into perhaps a sacrifice or a challenge to be met or a catalyst for something else. It gains a purpose.
The meaning gives it purpose.
Exactly. And what's particularly significant and really crucial for each of us listening is his point that no human and no destiny can be compared to another human or destiny.
Everyone's path is unique.
Totally unique, which means no situation is repeated, and every situation must be responded to with a different reaction. This highlights the deeply personal nature of how we respond to crisis. There isn't some universal formula for finding meaning. It's an intensely personal, often creative act.
It requires looking inward.
Definitely. It requires introspection, honesty, and a real willingness to confront the deepest questions about our existence, about what truly matters to us. Finding meaning doesn't erase the hurt, not at all, but it transforms the experience of suffering itself. It turns it from a senseless weight into a powerful catalyst for discovering purpose, building resilience, and facilitating deep growth. It allows us not just to survive adversity, but potentially to thrive because of it in a profound way.
Building that idea of transforming our experience, if we can find meaning, maybe we can also actively shift our perception of the pain itself while we're in it. Marianne Williamson, in A Return to Love, offers this powerful, almost prayer-like counsel for those moments of intense pain. She suggests saying, "Dear God, I am willing to see this differently."
Such a simple phrase, yet potentially so powerful.
It feels like it could unlock so much, doesn't it? It suggests an active step we can take towards transforming how we're experiencing something difficult. What does she really mean by inviting us to see this differently.
This simple prayer, "Dear God, I am willing to see this differently," really encapsulates a profound act of spiritual surrender and at the same time, a radical shift in perspective. Williamson explains that saying this signifies surrendering to him our thoughts about it.
Surrendering our thoughts.
Yes, which means consciously letting go of our own interpretations and opinions about the situation. Those interpretations are so often rooted in fear, in our past conditioning, in the ego's very limited view of things. Our ego thrives on control, doesn't it? On having a definite story, on being right about our suffering. It wants to assign blame, hold on to grievances, define ourselves by our pain.
This terrible thing happened to me, therefore I am.
Exactly. But when we genuinely utter that prayer, or even just hold that intention, "I am willing to see this differently," we're essentially saying, look, my current understanding, my current pain-filled narrative, it isn't serving me anymore. I am open. I'm open to a higher perspective. I'm open to a different truth, maybe a more loving truth.
Okay.
And she frames the moment when the pain is greatest, not as some dead end or failure, but actually as a wonderful opportunity.
An opportunity. When the pain is greatest. That sounds paradoxical.
It does. But why? Because, as she explains, the ego would prefer that we never look too directly into the pain. The ego is actually quite comfortable with us experiencing what she calls a mild river of misery running in the background of our lives.
That low-level hum of anxiety or discontent.
Exactly, that constant low-grade dissatisfaction, maybe quiet desperation. It's never quite bad enough to force us to really question our own choices, our own perspectives, our own deeply ingrained patterns that might be causing it.
We just tolerate it.
We tolerate it. However, a true crisis, when the pain becomes acute, when it hits us so hard we simply cannot ignore it anymore, that offers a critical juncture, a turning point. It's a chance to genuinely ask heaven for help, which, in a broader spiritual sense, just means inviting divine wisdom or universal love or simply a higher level of consciousness to shed new light on our situation.
Opening up to help beyond our own limited view.
Precisely. And this act of surrender, this asking for intervention or a new perspective, Williamson teaches, leads directly towards forgiveness. And importantly, not just forgiving others who we might be blaming, but crucially, forgiving ourselves.
Forgiving ourselves. For what?
For our judgments, our fears, our limited perceptions, for holding on to the pain for so long, perhaps. And this forgiveness, this release, is what enables us to finally move on. It works by bringing our darkness to light. It's about consciously choosing to engage with our suffering, not as some helpless victim trapped in a negative story, but as an empowered participant in our own healing and transformation, actively inviting a different, more loving reality into our experience.
So we've covered a lot of ground. Embracing discomfort, unmasking the ego's defenses, cultivating radical acceptance, even finding meaning in pain by shifting our perspective. For me, though, the thread that really seems to weave through all of this, kind of the foundational element, is the power of the present moment.
Being right here, right now.
Exactly. Eckhart Tolle, in books like A New Earth and The Power of Now, talks about body awareness, specifically as a doorway out of the prison that is the ego. How does simply connecting with our physical presence achieve something so profoundly liberating? How does it help us move out of that ego's prison and into the kind of wisdom we've been exploring?
Tolle's teaching is absolutely central, I think, to grounding these sometimes abstract spiritual ideas in very practical, accessible experience. He emphasizes that our minds are often trapped in this continuous, often completely unconscious stream of thinking.
The mental chatter.
That endless mental chatter, replaying past regrets, projecting anxieties about the future, judging, labeling, analyzing everything constantly. This incessant activity of the mind, this relentless internal commentary, is what forms the prison that is the ego. It keeps us locked in a story, completely disconnected from the vibrant, living reality of the present moment.
We're lost in thought, basically.
Most of the time, yes. So, to escape this prison, Tolle suggests cultivating inner space. And how do we do that? By creating gaps in that stream of thinking.
Gaps in thinking? How?
Well, it means intentionally, even just for a few seconds at first, shifting your attention away from all that mental noise. He explains that attention is the key to transformation, and full attention also implies acceptance. When you bring your full, non-judgmental attention to something, you are, by definition, accepting it exactly as it is in that moment without resistance.
Okay, so where do we put the attention?
Into the body. He strongly recommends bringing attention into the body. This means simply feeling the sensation of your breath coming in and out, feeling the contact of your feet on the ground, noticing the subtle internal energy field perhaps in your hands, or just the general feeling of being alive inside your skin.
Just simple physical sensations.
Simple physical sensations. And when we do this, we're actually doing several crucial things all at once. First, we are creating those gaps in the thought stream, giving the busy mind a brief, much-needed rest. Second, we're grounding ourselves firmly in the undeniable reality of this present moment, the only moment that ever truly exists.
Right.
And third, and this is really key for dealing with difficult emotions, we're processing lingering emotion that we might have been previously totally unaware of.
How does feeling the body process emotion?
Often, past hurts, anxieties, traumas, they don't just disappear. They remain held in the body as energetic blockages, as tension, as knots. By bringing conscious, non-judgmental attention to these physical sensations, maybe a tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, we allow these previously unconscious, lingering emotions to finally surface into our awareness.
We feel them consciously?
Yes. And this focused attention, this awareness itself, acts like a light. It transmutes these old emotions into consciousness. It allows them to dissolve, to release their grip on us, rather than continuing to fester in the shadows and drive our reactions unconsciously. It's like a profound kind of alchemy. Awareness transforms pain into presence.
Wow, awareness transforms pain into presence. I like that.
And this aligns beautifully with what Jon Kabat-Zinn talks about in Wherever You Go, There You Are. He describes meditation or mindfulness practice not as some attempt to stop thinking altogether, because you can't.
Right, the thoughts keep coming.
Exactly. But rather, it's about learning how to get out of this current of thoughts, sit by its bank, and listen to it, in full acceptance of whatever may emerge. By doing this, by cultivating that inner spaciousness and just observing whatever arises, thoughts, feelings, sensations, without getting swept away by them, without judgment, we encourage the deep to come to the surface and enrich your life and consciousness with its captive energies.
Releasing trapped energy.
Precisely. So body awareness isn't just some simple grounding technique, although it is that too. It's a direct, incredibly accessible path to liberation. It allows us to fully engage with our inner experience, however difficult, without being completely overwhelmed by it. It helps transform that inner turmoil into wisdom and clarity.
That journey out of the ego's prison, grounded in presence. It sounds like it also requires a pretty profound letting go of self-will. That deep-seated idea that my way is the only way, or the best way, that I need to control everything.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge piece of it.
The ancient spiritual text, the Theologia Germanica, puts it very bluntly. It advises that to achieve that which is best, one must forswear his own will. Give it up.
Strong words.
Very. It goes on to point out how the I, the me, the mine, and the like belong unto the natural and false light. It implies that our deepest desires, our personal will, when it's filtered purely through the ego, might actually be leading us astray, away from our true good, away from that deeper reality. That's a massive challenge, isn't it, to really let go of our own will?
It's an immense challenge, perhaps one of the most difficult hurdles on the spiritual path, because our entire modern culture, in many ways, champions individual will, self-assertion, going after what you want.
Getting yours?
Exactly. But from this deeper spiritual perspective, a life driven primarily by the ego, focused mainly on the I, the me, the mine, is inherently limited. Why? Because it operates from a place of perceived separation, from self-interest, and from a very finite, often distorted understanding of what is truly beneficial in the long run. It's a bit like, a small child insisting on steering a massive ocean liner. Their intentions might even be good, but their limited perspective could easily lead to disaster.
Good analogy.
C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity illustrates this internal struggle with such a vivid clarity and real practical honesty. He talks about these powerful, corrosive feelings like resentment, which, he says, quite startlingly, must be simply killed.
Killed.
He's not talking literally, of course. He means spiritually killed, eradicated. He's stressing the absolute necessity of rooting out that ego-driven impulse. And he's very clear, this isn't easy. It's not a one-time decision, not some magic fix.
It's ongoing work.
It's ongoing work. He describes it as requiring consistent, lifelong effort. You have to keep hitting it on the head every time it bobs its head up. This continuous discipline, this conscious renunciation of those ego-driven impulses, like the desire for revenge or the need to always be right or holding on to bitterness, is highly consistent with Chödrön's path, isn't it? Leaning into the discomfort, confronting our internal patterns instead of just letting them rule us unchecked. It's about recognizing that some of these internal states, fueled entirely by the ego, actually diminish us. They don't serve our true well-being.
Right. They keep us small.
They do. And Deepak Chopra, in the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, explains the practical implications of this kind of renunciation from an almost energetic standpoint. He notes that attention to the ego consumes the greatest amount of energy.
That makes sense. It's exhausting being defensive all the time.
It's incredibly draining. Think about the sheer mental and emotional resources we pour into protecting our self-image, seeking external approval, trying to control every outcome, worrying constantly about what others think, defending our perceived weaknesses. It's a never-ending battle.
So what happens when we stop feeding the ego so much energy?
What Chopra says, when this enormous amount of energy is freed up from those endless egoic pursuits, it doesn't just disappear. It can be rechanneled and used to create anything that you want. And he doesn't just mean material wealth, though that might be part of it for some. He means it can fuel profound inner peace, creativity, deeper relationships, a stronger sense of purpose. This shift moves us away from a limited, fear-based existence towards genuine evolution, towards abundance in all its forms, towards authentic freedom, not just materially, but spiritually and creatively too. It's about redirecting our precious life force away from defending a false, fragile self towards manifesting our true potential in alignment with something much larger than just ourselves.
And once we start releasing that tight grip of the ego and self-will, it sounds like a powerful sense of detachment can begin to emerge. Now, detachment can sound kind of cold or intimidating at first glance, can it? Like we're supposed to stop caring about things or people.
That's a common misunderstanding, definitely.
But it's clearly not that simple. The Dhammapada, the Buddhist text, states very clearly, detachment is the best of dhammas, meaning the best of qualities or truths. And it advises us to shed sensual attachment and hatred in order to become one at peace.
Attachment and aversion, the two biggies.
Right. And the Bhagavad Gita echoes this, urging the spiritual seeker to be without duality and transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature. It feels like we're being invited to step back from the constant push and pull, the roller coaster of ordinary life. Can you help us understand what this kind of spiritual detachment truly entails? And why is it considered so central to finding inner peace?
That's a great point about detachment often being misconstrued as apathy or indifference. It's really not about not caring. It's actually about a profound, liberating inner freedom. By shedding sensual attachment, which means our constant craving for pleasure, comfort, sensory gratification, and also hatred or aversion, our resistance to pain, discomfort, perceived threats, the Gita says one moves towards a pure state of spiritual existence.
A pure state.
Yes, meaning becoming free from ideas of gain and protection, and ultimately becoming established in the self. Imagine being so deeply rooted in your inner core, your true self, that external circumstances, whether they bring pleasure or pain, success or failure, praise or blame, no longer have the power to completely destabilize you. You're living from a place of inner stability, rather than being constantly tossed about by the ever-changing winds of external events or your own internal cravings and fears.
Living from the center.
Exactly, living from the center. And Joseph Campbell, in The Power of Myth, expands on this beautifully. He speaks about the incredible power that comes from identifying with that which transcends pairs of opposites. You know, the endless dualities our minds create, good, bad, pleasure, pain, success, failure, light, dark. Our minds are constantly evaluating, judging, categorizing everything based on these opposites.
Are always taking sides.
Constantly. But when we begin to identify with something deeper within us, with a transcendent reality that actually encompasses and moves beyond these polarities, we are no longer solely defined by the ever-shifting poles of experience. We start to see them more clearly as simply aspects of life's flow, rather than definitive judgments on our fundamental worth or our capacity for happiness.
Seeing the bigger picture.
Seeing the much bigger picture. And this concept finds perhaps its ultimate, most subtle expression in the Taoist principle of Wu Wei from the Tao Te Ching.
Wu Wei, that means non-doing.
Well, literally it translates something like without doing, causing, or making, but it's more accurately understood, I think, as without meddlesome, combative, or egotistical effort. It's definitely not passive inaction or laziness. It's more like intelligent, effective, effortless action that arises naturally from being in alignment with the universal flow, with the Tao, rather than constantly struggling against it.
You give an example.
Think of a really skilled carpenter. They don't fight the grain of the wood, do they? They work with it. Or think of water flowing downhill. It finds its way around obstacles naturally without forcing. Wu Wei means no going against the nature of things, no clever, ego-driven tampering with the natural unfolding of life. It's about returning to what the Taoists call original simplicity, or the uncarved block, which inherently holds its own natural power.
Trusting the flow.
Exactly. It means trusting the intrinsic wisdom of life itself, letting go of that desperate need to control every single outcome, and learning to act from a place of natural spontaneity, intuitive timing, and effortless effectiveness. This is what leads to profound inner peace and harmony. When you finally cease fighting against reality, you discover you're actually in harmony with it.
That effortless alignment, that deep inner peace and wisdom. It really brings to mind Siddhartha's journey from Hermann Hesse's novel. He realized, didn't he, that the ultimate meaning he was seeking wasn't found just in external teachings or in rigid ascetic practices, or even in sensory indulgence. He saw it was actually hidden behind both thoughts, as well as the senses.
Beyond both mind and body, in a way.
Yes, and his profound realization ultimately led him to obey a voice in his own heart. It points to such a deeply personal, intuitive path to truth, one that seems to integrate everything we've been discussing: presence, letting go of ego, finding wisdom within.
Absolutely. Siddhartha's profound realization really underscores that true wisdom isn't just an intellectual thing, something you can reason your way into. Nor is it solely a sensory experience, something found only through external pleasure or pain. It's something more fundamental, something that underlies and transcends both.
The voice in the heart.
That voice in the heart. And his journey culminated, didn't it, in this incredible acceptance of all experiences, allowing the voices of joy and of suffering to merge together into the vast flowing river of life. He saw that all these seemingly disparate elements, his own image, his memories of his father, of Kamala, of his friend Govinda, all the human experiences he'd encountered were all part of the same current, heading all, being the river for the goal, longing, desiring, suffering, yet always flowing, always reaching new goals. That lonely seeking voice he started with eventually merged with other voices, joined voices of joy and of suffering, good and bad voices, laughing and sad ones, 100 voices, 1,000 voices.
Seeing the unity in it all.
Exactly. It wasn't about suppressing any part of life, but integrating everything, seeing the inherent unity within all the diversity. That voice in his own heart was the culmination of him deeply listening to his own inner wisdom, a wisdom cultivated through embracing discomfort, transcending the ego's demands, and being fully radically present with whatever arose.
And this individual awakening, this personal realization of unity, it seems to resonate with that broader idea of universal interconnectedness you mentioned earlier.
It really does. The perennial philosophy, Aldous Huxley's collection of mystical insights, speaks of a non-personal substratum of individual minds. It suggests that beneath our individual thoughts, feelings, and experiences, there's actually a shared underlying consciousness, a common ground of being that connects us all.
We're all connected at a deeper level.
That's the idea. And Conversations with God states it even more explicitly, calling it the ultimate truth. Nothing exists in the universe that is separate from anything else. Everything is intrinsically connected, irrevocably interdependent, interactive, interwoven into the fabric of all of life. This isn't presented as just a nice poetic notion. It's framed as a fundamental law of existence.
Wow. Everything connected.
And this profound truth extends beyond just individual spiritual paths. It actually impacts our social and political realities, too. Think about James Baldwin in The Fire next time. He powerfully illustrates this very interconnectedness when he argues that the price of the liberation of the white people is the liberation of the blacks.
How does that connect?
Well, his point, viewed through this lens of deep interconnectedness, is that true freedom and transformation are inherently interwoven. They're not isolated achievements. One group's oppression inevitably diminishes everyone. Conversely, one group's liberation ultimately elevates everyone. It's a profound social testament to the idea that our personal struggles and awakenings aren't just solitary events happening in a vacuum. They are echoes and reflections of a universal journey, inextricably linked to the well-being and the evolving consciousness of all beings. When you truly open your heart to your own pain and your own truth, as Pema Chödrön encourages, you are, in a very real sense, opening it to the entire fabric of existence. #tag outro.
Wow, okay, we have journeyed through some incredibly profound territory today, really deep ideas, from Pema Chödrön's truly radical invitation to embrace chaos and fear, not as enemies, but as actual gateways to truth.
Such a core shift.
To really understanding the ego's subtle but oh so powerful resistance mechanisms. Then exploring the transformative power of things like radical acceptance and finding meaning even in our deepest pain by shifting our perspective.
And finally landing in that liberating freedom.
Yes, that freedom that comes from anchoring ourselves right here in the present moment, maybe renouncing some of that rigid self-will, embracing a healthy detachment, and ultimately recognizing our deep, universal interconnectedness with everything.
It all weaves together.
It really does. So what does all this mean for you, our listener, right now, maybe facing your own challenges?
Well, perhaps it means that those difficult times, those moments when it feels like everything is falling apart, they aren't necessarily the dead ends we fear them to be. They don't have to be something to just avoid at all
They
costs.
could be something else entirely.
Exactly. Instead, they are potential doorways. Doorways to a deeper, maybe more authentic existence. Doorways to discovering that unfabricated self we talked about, and maybe, just maybe, to a level of inner peace you might not have thought was possible before. That's beautifully put. And what we've really seen today is that this idea of leaning in, leaning into the fear, the anxiety, the heartbreak, it's not about passive surrender to suffering. It's definitely not a call to go looking for pain.
Right, not masochism.
Not at all. Rather, it's an active, courageous, and deeply compassionate engagement with reality exactly as it is in this moment, not just how we wish it would be. It's a courageous path, yes, but one that leads toward genuine spiritual awakening and discovering that unfabricated state of being, that true self that isn't dependent on external circumstances constantly going our way, or on all those fragile egoic protections we build.
It takes work, though.
Oh, absolutely. This journey demands ongoing awareness. It demands radical acceptance of our whole inner landscape, the good and the bad, and it requires the courageous, continuous letting go of that ego-driven resistance. But by understanding these principles and maybe beginning to gently integrate them into your own life, you gain more than just tools to navigate life's inevitable storms. You gain access to a deeper wisdom and a more profoundly open heart, one that's ready, or at least more willing, to meet whatever arises.
A powerful toolkit for life.
Indeed. So reflecting on Pema Chödrön's profound insight that fear is a natural reaction to moving closer to the truth, maybe consider this as you move forward from our conversation today. What profound truth might your most resisted pain or that unresolved situation you keep pushing away be trying gently, or maybe not so gently, to reveal to you right now? What if the very thing you're trying so hard to avoid is actually an invitation? An invitation to your own deepest liberation?